It rains 170 days every year. So what makes this one so special? Well, let me tell you a story. I started indoor karting when I was 8, and I loved it. It was competitive, fast, and after about a year or two, I became pretty quick. So it came time to move outdoors, and after taking some time to get used to it, I stayed fairly fast. So much so that after the first 3 races of my first full season, I was leading the championship. It felt like I was on top of the world, and nothing could go wrong. But wait, what's that? Rain. It's a challenge I'd never come across before, but I thought, it's just water, right? What's the big deal? Turns out it's everything. As soon as the dark clouds came out, my confidence vanished, and so did my pace. Spin after spin, I dropped like a stone every time it rained. Losing the championship that season after a string of races in the winter was the wake-up call that I needed. That's when I turned to sim racing. I spent hours learning the wet line, throttle control, and staying calm under pressure. And then I got to the track. It rained, and last. It wasn't easy, but race by race we chipped away at it. And by the end of last season, I finally earned my first wet podium. Which brings us to today, another rainy race weekend. Did all that practice finally pay off? Stick around, because this one came down to the last stint. So when we arrived, we were paired with Nuno and Harry, who are both good drivers, with a lot of prior wet experience. But to understand the conditions we face today, we have to rewind a little bit. So for the first time this year, it finally snowed, and it had to do it on a race day. But luckily, it had all melted by the time we got to the track. Or was this lucky, as it turned the track into a pond? No exaggeration. But nonetheless, the race continued, and Nuno went out to do qualifying. However, after getting caught up in some traffic, he put it P7. But Tim, you ask, how did we convert this to a potential win? Well, you'll just have to watch the start. So it's lights out and away we go. Bailey gets a good start. Seth tries to creep around the outside of him. One of the cars right at the back hasn't gone, but I think he's started up now. You can see the cadet has bunched up. Nuno's actually lost one position, but he's got the inside into Senna. However, he's just keeping clean right now. We don't want to get any warnings on the start. As you can see, everybody there 4 wide going into 180. This is not going to work out. It's an absolute pond on the exit. They're going to just spin if they're not careful. So 4 wide. Otto sliding across the track. Hits Dexter. Dexter's round. He's hit Ethan. Ethan's round in the grass as well. And you see the one massive winner out of that is Nuno. He tees it up beautifully, getting a really wide entry so that when the first point of contact hits with Otto and Ethan, he goes directly to the inside, just enough to dodge Dexter and go around the massive clump of cars that are spinning everywhere. Then follows it down the inside on the little right corner, down the inside of Josh, and up into 3rd place. Now chasing down Seth for 2nd into the final corner. You can see Bailey starting to pull a gap. He has got Josh right on his tail, but 7th to 3rd as we finish the first lap. You can also just see how much they're aquaplaning down the straight. It's an absolute river here, especially on the main straight as it's the lowest point on the circuit. So I only recorded the first lap and a half, but eventually Nuno did overtake Seth for P2. However, Bailey continued to pull a gap till the end of the stint, meaning although we were P2, with a big gap to the cars behind, we also had quite a way to go forward if we wanted the win. So we got to work. And we also went for a different strategy to shake things up a bit, and try and optimise it for each of our skill sets. So Harry coming down into the pit lane now, he's going to hop out on the left, run round the back of the car, he'll tap me. He has to tap me before I hop in the car, so I chuck the seat liner in, the pedals are in the right place, and we set off. There's a massive puddle on the exit of the pit lane, which you'll see splash the camera in a second. There we go, and now I'm absolutely soaking wet, and there's a cadet right in front of me. And you can just see how wet it is, as through this first corner, this cadet has a massive snap of oversteer, and I have to go all the way to the outside to make sure I don't hit him. So aside from right now and at the end of my stint, we were in clear air for pretty much the whole time, which while it isn't great for the camera, it was really good for the race, meaning we were able to close down the gap that Bailey had built. But while nearing the last few laps of my stint, I caught up to another car. So following him through Oak Tree, he gets a big slide on the exit, so we're going to catch and send it all the way down the inside. He'll turn in, but we're going to hold it. We'll slot in behind him for a second, but you can see as he slides, he taps the curb, and it's just going to send him round. You couldn't quite see it because of the raindrop, but you can see his rear bumper, and now it's just onto the car in front. But you can see as he goes down the main straight, he puts his thumb up. meaning he's likely pitting this lap, so I don't even attempt to overtake him. And actually a lap after this, we were pulled into the pits as well. The end of my stint also marks another big point in the race, as our strategy has now temporarily balanced out with everyone else's, so we can gauge exactly where we are. And it's looking good. Not just myself, but the whole team's pace through the first 3 stints have been really good, meaning we've cut down the gap to Bailey to around 5 to 10 seconds. But their team aren't slow either, so this is going to come right down to the last few laps. So a lot has happened since my first stint. We've been continuously putting in good pace to close down the gap to the team in first, but we're still quite confused as to where we are, as Larchie, one of the people in their team, had a pit stop at around the same time as us to go on to their final stint, meaning we're either a lap behind or a lap ahead, and we'd only know once I'd exited the pit lane. So Jack comes into the pit lane, he'll hop round the back of the car. It's going to be a pretty fast stop, but the question is, has the undercut worked? Are we in first or are we in second? And it's P1. Not only are we first, but we're first by about 40 seconds. But this race was nowhere near over, as we had 1 or 2 contact warnings, and 1 more could result in a penalty. And after that, there's the ever-present risk of binning it. Sure, we had a 1 lap gap, but just 1 spin at the wrong angle could see that gap fade away in seconds. Meaning that once again, my stint was great for the race and horrible for the camera, as my only job was to not put it in the wall. So with no need to push, I could literally just sit back and relax. While making sure not to push the limits too hard, I used my longer 20-minute stint to learn a lot more about wet driving. You can do countless hours of sim training, watch your replays over and over, but the only real way to improve in the wet is just experience. And that's exactly what this is. So after 15 minutes of finding the grip, and despite not pushing, getting progressively faster, something came up in the last few laps that could have ruined our race. I caught up to the back of a slower car, and after seeing my dad frantically waving at me not to push, and realising that we still had a 40-second gap back to Larchie, I had to do the thing that no racing driver should ever have to endure, sitting behind him. But as we rounded the final corner, the realisation set in. I've just won my first wet race. No, we've just won our first wet race.
Oh, a P1.
This was because of not only great pace from the team, but a brilliant strategy, diverting from the rest of the pack, and meaning that we gained a lot of time in the pits. Huge well done to Nuno and Harry. Go follow them on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.